the spiritual disciplines that he has given us. He has given us Bible study, which is one of the things that we're going to do this afternoon. He has given us prayer, which is something else that we've done this afternoon. And then another spiritual discipline is the discipline of fasting. As I've shared with many of you, fasting is really not one of my strong suits. It's not, I guess I don't know. I'm probably not different than a lot of other people. I think there are some people, I'm going to say maybe they have the gift of fasting. They like to fast, but it's not high on my list. But I know it's something that God has given us, and that we know that God works through fast. So again, we've joined together today to call upon his name. We're going to continue a theme that we began last week. Last week, we talked about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and how that is setting the stage for the tribulation. And we see how that some of those things that we talked about last week are in place, are moving in a direction that's leading us towards the tribulation. So I wanted to start a series today, and it'll probably be maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, may take us into Thanksgiving, on the tribulation. Let's talk about the tribulation and what that is, and what we need to know about it as believers. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is what we're going to be talking about the tribulation. And as we lead up to the tribulation in Revelation 5. So if you have your Bibles and you want to turn there, or if you just want to follow along on the screen, that will work too. But in Revelation chapter 5, the readers are introduced to a scroll. Notice what it says here. John says, I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a scroll, or some translations say a book, and it was written within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. So you can see a picture of an ancient scroll right there on the screen. And one of the things that would happen is that they would write on the front, or let's put it this way, because we might not know the front or the back, but they would write on one side of the scroll, and then they would write on the other side of the scroll. And then they would roll it up and seal it. And you can see the seals right there, 7 seals. So this scroll contains God's title deed to the earth. All right, and we're going to see that as we move through these 7 seals. Actually, this is God's title deed. All of us, well, I'm gonna say most of us, have houses that we own, and we've received a deed, to our houses, showing that we own our houses. And so when you look at this world, it might seem like it's being turned over to evil and wickedness. When you look at all that's going on, just, and I don't know how many times I've heard it said that this old world is a wicked place. And truly it is. Truly it is. Just think of some of the wickedness that takes place on this earth. You got human trafficking, you've got wars going on, people being killed, you got people being martyred, and Just think about all the wickedness that goes on this earth. But yet and still, this is God's earth. He owns it. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they who dwell therein. So God does own it. Even though wickedness seemed to run rampant, that one day God is going to take it back, and he's going to eradicate all the wickedness that we see in this earth today. So this title deed, this scroll that John saw, he saw that it revealed the rest of the activities in the book of Revelation. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls. And we're going to look at, all those individually. But we see that even though we look at this scroll, there's a bit of sad news. And the sad news is that there was no one worthy to open the scroll. John says, and I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice. I'm in verse 2 of Revelation 5. Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals? And no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth were able to open the scroll, neither to look on it. And John said that I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the scroll, neither to look on it. I think of that song, and I know most of you have heard the song. I can't think of who sings it now, but the guy said, I searched high and low. I looked all over, and there's no one greater than you. There's no one greater than you. He says, I searched high and low. I looked all over. There's no one greater than the Lord. And so John says that there was a search for somebody that was worthy to open this scroll. And there was no one found worthy after they searched the entities of heaven, of earth. There was no one worthy. And so John, he must have knew the importance of the scroll, because he said, I wept. I began to cry because there was no one able to open the scroll. But we see standing in the midst of the throne room, and that's where we are right now. We're in the throne room of God in Revelation 5. Standing in the midst of the throne is a slain lamb, and this lamb is Jesus Christ. And he came, and he was worthy to take the scroll. Verse 5 says, and one of the elders said unto me, John, hey, John, don't weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, he hath prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its seals. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as though it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him that sat on the throne. So we see here that there was one that was worthy. That, just think of the note of sadness that probably came over all heaven when there was no one found worthy to open the scroll. John said he wept. What did the rest of heaven do? Did they moan? Did they grieve? What did they do? And so there, for this moment, there might have been just a note of sadness, even though I know heaven is a happy place. In God's presence is fullness of joy, and at his right hand is pleasures forevermore. So we know that. But I'm just saying, I wonder if for this moment, if there wasn't just like a lull that came over heaven. As a matter of fact, when you look at Revelation, I think it's chapter 8. Let me get there. Revelation 8 and verse 1. And it talked about the seventh seal being opened. And notice what it says here. There was silence in heaven about the space of a half hour. So there does seem to be times when the mood in heaven might shift. It might shift from jubilation and worship to more maybe contemplation, right? Meditation. And so maybe that was the mood that was here. But we see that this lamb came forward and that he was he was worthy to take this scroll. Now, as we read, and I have it's not a riddle. I'm gonna call it a riddle, but I'm gonna read this and I'm gonna throw it out to you. We see in verse 6, John says, and I beheld. So put on your Bible hats now. Put on your Bible hats. And lo, in the midst of the throne of the four living creatures, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, though it had been slain, having 7 horns, 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God. So as you read this, and as I read, in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as though it had been slain. So again, a little riddle, and it might not be a riddle, just something that I'm calling a riddle. What's the problem here? Okay, what's when we read this verse, and particularly when we read, he saw a lamb as though it had been, that there stood a lamb as though it had been slain. There's a problem here, right? There's a problem. And this is the problem. If you kill a lamb, how does it stand? If you kill a lamb, if you slay a lamb, how can a slain lamb stand? There's only one way, right? Yeah. The resurrection of Jesus Christ, right? Jesus Christ was the lamb slain before the foundations of the world. Jesus Christ was the Lamb of God that was slain. But thank God that the slain lamb didn't stay dead. That what did he do? He rose again. The slain lamb rose again. And so when you read that right there, it could be, unless you got a little history, a little background, it can be a little confusing, because slain lambs don't stand. Slain lambs don't stand, right? The only way is through the resurrection. And so we see that this slain lamb is able to take this scroll. And because he's able to take this scroll, in Revelation 5, 9, and 10, it says this. It talks about the 4 and 20 elders. It says, and they sang a new song, saying, "Thou art worthy to take the scroll and to open the seals, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us by our God out of every blood and kindred and tongue and people and nation, and have made us unto our God a kingdom of priests, and we shall reign on the earth forever." That's Revelation 5, 9, and 10. So these 4 beasts and the 4 and 20 elders, they sang a new song in honor of the Lamb. It was a song of recognition. It was a song of redemption, and it was a song of royalty. It was a song of recognition. You are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals. The Lamb, you are worthy. He was recognized as being worthy. It was a song of redemption, for you were slain, and you have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe, tongue, and people and nation. And it was a song of royalty. Because of that, you have made us a nation of kings and priests to our God. I bet you didn't know that, right? You didn't know that you were a king. You didn't know that you were a priest. So next time somebody messes with you, you just let them know that you're a king. You can't mess with a king. Oh, no. All right. but because of what Christ did, that for God, we are a nation of kings and priests. All right. And then we see all of heaven, begins to adore the Lamb. And can you imagine how powerful this is? Right? All of heaven, before it was just the four beasts and the 24 elders, right? But now all of heaven stops and they proclaim the worthiness of the Lamb. Now, remember, just a second ago, we read what? That no one was worthy and that John cried, right? But now the Lamb came forth and he took the scroll and he was worthy to open the scroll. And so we see the recognition. Worthy is the Lamb. That means worthy. When you think about worthy, look at that word, drop the Y off of that word, right? Worth. The Lamb is worth something. He is worth everything, right? He is worthy. He is worth your praise. He is worth your worship. He is worth the recognition that he can get. Worthy is the Lamb. Why? Because the Lamb was slain. He died for you. He died for me, the Lamb that was slain. And what is he worthy to receive? The reception, to receive power. That's omnipotence. To receive riches. That's wealth. To receive wisdom. That's omniscience. To receive strength. That's force. To receive honor. That's worth and value. And glory. That's radiance. And blessings. And that is every great thing that you can say about him. Man, just think, all of heaven stopped to just recognize the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb. Now, you're going to see in a second, this is all building up to something. That's why I wanted to take the time to go back into chapter 5 a little bit, because it's all leading up to something. And it's something that's going to be nothing like this earth has ever experienced before. So all heaven adored this Lamb. Look at the universal worship of the Lamb. The one where the regions, the ones giving adoration, every creature which is in heaven, on earth, and under the earth, and even those that are in the sea. This doesn't leave anywhere out. This praise is coming from everywhere. The reverence, the worshipers say blessings, that word eulogy, to say great things, honor, to give worth and value, glory, to acknowledge his brilliance, power, to recognize his dominion. And who are the recipients of this reverence? The one that's sitting on the throne, which is who? Is God, right? The Lord, the one that sits upon the throne, and the Lamb, Jesus Christ. And notice that this reverence and this worship is unending. It goes on forever and ever and ever. Now we move into Revelation 6. And so you got the background now. You got the background. We move into Revelation 6. And John says, I saw when the Lamb, verse 1, he said, I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I had heard, as it were, the noise of thunder of one of the four living creatures say, come. Right? And so we looked at these four horsemen last week. So you see what chapter 5 led up to. It led up to the Lamb doing what? So, you might ask the question, why is Revelation 5 even in the Bible, right? The reason that it's in the Bible is because it shows you what the Lamb is getting ready to do, that the Lamb is getting ready to open the seals. He's getting ready to break the seals on the scroll, okay? And so let's look at it, what we got going on here. All right, so we're talking about the tribulation. Let me do this. Let's go here. What are some biblical terms for the tribulation? Because that's what when Jesus begins to open these scrolls, that's what's getting ready to take place. The Great Tribulation is going to take place. And so we see the Bible has different terms that refer to the tribulation. In Matthew 24, Jesus called it the tribulation. In Daniel 9, it's called Daniel's 70th week, 7 years, Daniel's 70th week. In Jeremiah, it's called the time of Jacob's trouble. In Obadiah, in Joel, in Amos, in Isaiah, in Zephaniah, in Zechariah, First Thessalonians, is called the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord, this day of tribulation. In Isaiah, he calls it the day of the Lord's vengeance. In Zephaniah, he calls it the day of the Lord's wrath. And then Zephaniah refers to it again, and he calls it the day of the Lord's anger. So we see that the tribulation, because now I'm gonna go back to this previous slide, because some people try to tell us that there's not going to be a tribulation, right? They're saying that there's, when we read about the tribulation in the Bible, that, it's not talking about a tribulation where there's 7 years of God unleashing his wrath upon this earth, right? So there are 3 views of the tribulation, right? The first view is premillennial. The second view would be amillennial, postmillennial, and the third view would be preterist. The premillennial, which I am, I'm a premillennialist, right? And I believe that most of you probably are too. The premillennial view of the tribulation is that it is a future 7-year period in which evil leaders will emerge, the Antichrist, the false prophet, those individuals will emerge, and the wrath of God will be poured out increasingly upon the earth. The wrath of God will be poured out increasingly upon the earth. So that would be the premillennial view. Now, again, that would be the only view that would take a literal interpretation of the tribulation period, because now you have, amillennialists and postmillennialists who would, again, be many people that are probably people that you've worked with, people that you've gone to school with, people that are your neighbors, right? They would say that this current age, right now, we are in the tribulation, right? That if you got troubles, right? If you got aches and pains in your body, that you are in the tribulation right now. If you got financial problems, you are in the tribulation right now. If you are having relationship problems, you are in the tribulation right now. You see people that are being martyred for being Christians, they are in the tribulation. So they don't look at the tribulation as a future 7-year period. They would say that the tribulation is the problems that we have right now. So, as I think that's why it's important to look at the book of Revelation, because as we go through the book of Revelation, we're going to see that these troubles that we have are nothing like what's going to be manifested on this earth. So that would be, and you see they even got scriptures, John 16:33 and Romans 5:3-4, where it talks about tribulation, right? Tribulation worketh patience. But it's a different kind of tribulation. Again, that's why it's important to study the Bible, because you got to study the Bible in context. If you take it out of context, then you can say stuff like this. Well, we're in the tribulation right now. And there are some great Bible teachers that I highly respect that say that we are in the tribulation right now, but that's not the case. All right. Then you got the preterist view, and the preterists basically believe that everything in the book of Revelation took place in the 1st century. So they would say that when these events, these seals and bowls and trumpet judgments, that they all took place in the 1st century. And it culminated, and we know this for a fact, that in 70 AD, the Emperor Titus came into Jerusalem and he destroyed Jerusalem. He burned down the temple and knocked down the walls and destroyed the city. And so some people say, well, that was the tribulation right there. Again, would to God that that was the tribulation, because that would have been, kind of mild for most of the people, right? So we would believe, and again, when I say we, I'm assuming that you are premillennial, that it's going to be a future 7-year period where the wrath of God will be unleashed on this earth. But it'll also be a time when the Antichrist and his program will be manifested on this earth. Now, I put this note here, and the note is that the tribulation spoken of in the book of Revelation could only fit a premillennial view. Because look what Jesus said in Matthew 24 and verse 21. Jesus said that this would be a period of time that that's such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor shall ever be. So how can, the troubles of this world fit into what Jesus said? Jesus said when this tribulation comes, he said it's going to be a time that has never been experienced on this world. And after it's over, there'll never be another time. How could it be 70 AD when the Romans came in and destroyed Jerusalem? Again, that there's been worse things that have happened. Just think of the 10 million Jews that got killed, during the Holocaust. When in the first century, it just basically said that the Romans destroyed the city and the Jews scattered. There's a big difference there between destroying a city and people scattering and then 10 million people being killed. So, when you look at that, that wasn't in comparison to some of the nefarious things that have taken place over the centuries. The destruction of Jerusalem in the first century kind of wanes in comparison to some of those things. And so Jesus says that this tribulation period that's coming, he said it's going to be like a time that never was on this earth, and nor ever shall be. So when you look at that, the troubles of this world and the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, it doesn't square with the words that Christ spoke here. So I'll just say this again. Some of the people who don't believe in a 7-year tribulation period are probably some of your good friends, right? You're good. Sometimes when I start naming religions, then I get in trouble. So I'm not going to name any religions this afternoon. And I'll tell you this, that probably a lot of them don't even know the doctrine of their denomination, because if you ask some of them, they don't know this stuff. But yet still, this is what their denomination believes. All right. So these are the views concerning the tribulation. All right. We looked at that. Now, what is the purpose of the tribulation? If you got the notes, I gave you a detailed explanation of the purpose of the tribulation. All right. Detail. And one of the things we read in Daniel 9 about Daniel's 70 weeks, and there's still 1 week that's unfulfilled. And so that's 7 years, and it's unfulfilled. And so during the tribulation, God will resume his dealings with Israel. Right now, who is God dealing with? God is dealing with the church, right? If you look at the Old Testament up until the time that Christ came, who was God dealing with? He was dealing with Israel. He gave Israel the law. He gave Israel the prophets. He gave Israel the feasts. He gave Israel the festivals, right? And it was all about Israel. Now, there were Gentiles that, were saved and things of that nature. So we know that, that as Gentiles, God dealt with us too. But who was the main people that he was dealing with? He was dealing with the Israelites. Okay. When Christ came, somebody watch this now. Somebody watch this. That when Christ came, he took his attention from Israel and he gave it to the church. And so now we are in the church age. And let me say this, because there's some false teachings going around that's saying that the church replaced Israel. No, the church didn't replace Israel. God is still going to continue to deal with Israel. There's many people that believe, well, since the church came, God is no longer dealing with Israel. And that the church took the place of Israel. No, the church didn't take the place of Israel. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. But now God is dealing with the church. And so when he's done dealing with the church, and that will be during the tribulation, he'll be done. He won't be dealing with the church anymore. He'll be dealing with Israel again. So the purpose of the tribulation is that God will resume his dealings with Israel. Now, keep in mind, and we're going to look at some of this stuff, that, he's going to ordain 144,000 Jewish evangelists, to go out through all the earth. We're going to see the reemergence of, I believe, Elijah and Enoch, and they're going to come and they're going to be preaching. So God will resume his dealings with Israel, and he will bring salvation to them. So that will be the primary purpose as God deals with Israel. He will be lining them up, for salvation. Now, another purpose of the tribulation is to bring judgment upon unbelieving Gentiles. That, as Jesus said, there'll be a time on this earth like there never was before. And so the tribulation will be a time of judgment upon unbelieving Gentiles. And, we're going to look at one where it says that they're going to be so interested in getting away from God, right? I mean, getting away from God, that they're going to ask the rocks to fall on them and kill them, because they don't want to, instead of submitting to God, they would rather be killed by the rocks. Okay, so the purpose of the tribulation is twofold. God resumes his dealings with Israel, and God will bring judgment upon the unbelieving Gentiles of this earth. All right. Now, and I gave this to you in your notes too, so you have this in your notes. I didn't put the scriptures here, but you have the scriptures in your notes. Now, as the church, we don't have to go through the tribulation. And I like what, and man, I just found out that, and I didn't know this, that one of my mentors, Dr. Ed Heinzen, went home to be with the Lord. I just found that out. I didn't know that. He went home to be with the Lord earlier in this summer. But I like my mentor, Dr. Ed Heinzen. One of the things that he said is, God didn't give these things to scare us. God gave these things to prepare us. My. I like that. I like that. Dr. Ed Heinzen. You can pull up that quote by him. God didn't give us these things to scare us. God is saying to the church, don't be scarred, right? Don't be scarred, right? He didn't give us these things to scare us. He gave us these things to prepare us. So why do I believe? Now, there's a lot of people that will disagree with me. Okay, I'm letting you know that right now. There are a lot of people that will disagree. But I believe that there's overwhelming evidence to show that the church will not go through the tribulation. Some people believe that the church is going to go through part of the tribulation. Some people believe that it's going to go through all the tribulation. I believe that we're not going to go through any of it. And these are the reasons. Again, if you have the notes, I got the scriptures there in the notes. The church is not mentioned in Revelation 6 through 18. And that's where we see the tribulation. If you go back and read the book of Revelation in chapters 6 through 18, it talks about the tribulation. Now, it don't say one thing about the church. But now notice, in the first chapters, let me just read this to you for a second, right? In chapter 2, verse 1, unto the angel of the church of Ephesus. Revelation 2, 8, and unto the angel of the church of Smyrna. Revelation 2:12, and unto the angel of the church of Pergamum. Revelation 2:18, and unto the angel of the church of Thyatira. Revelation 3:1, and to the angel of the church of Sardis. And Revelation 3:7, unto the angel of the church of Philadelphia. Revelation 3:14, unto the angel of the church of Laodicea. So we see that what's in the first couple chapters of Revelation, right? He's talking about the church. But in Revelation 6-18, you don't hear anything about the church, which is the Great Tribulation. Now notice in chapter 19, it says, verse 7, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife have made herself ready. Who is the wife? Who is the bride? The church. So he starts talking about the church again in Revelation 19. But he didn't say a thing about it in chapter 6-18. So that leads me to believe that the church will not go through the tribulation. God has not appointed the church to wrath, right? I was looking for something to make sure. Okay, I'm gonna cover this in a second. So the church has not been appointed to wrath. And what is, oh man, what is the tribulation? It's the wrath of the Lord and the wrath of the Lamb. That is the tribulation. It's the wrath of the Lord and it's the wrath of the Lamb. The church is delivered from the hour of tribulation. We read that in the scriptures. The church is coming back with Jesus. We'll be in heaven with Jesus during the tribulation. In Revelation 19, let me go back to it again. All right. Now this is at the end of the tribulation, right? Notice here. And I saw heaven open, Revelation 19:11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he does judge and make war. And then, it goes on, and he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is the Word of God. Look at this. And the armies that were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. Who is that? That's the church. Notice, we will ride white horses. We are clothed in fine linen, and it's white and clean. That's the dress of the saints, right? So we're coming back with Jesus. Now notice also, how many people go to war dressed in white? I guarantee you that you're not going to see any armies dressed in white. They're going to have that camouflage, or they're going to have some other kind of color. Notice this army is dressed in white and clean. Why is that? Because we're not going to have to do any fighting, right? Jesus is going to do all the fighting. What's that song say? He gives me all my prescriptions. Come on in the room. He gives me all my prescriptions. He heals all my diseases. And what's the other thing? He fights all my battles. He fights all my battles. So we're coming back with Jesus. And so we're not going to be here during the tribulation. The church will not experience the wrath of the Lamb, right? Why? Let me ask you this question. Why would Jesus beat up his bride? If we're the bride of Christ, we're the church, we're the bride of Christ, why would Jesus beat us up? Because what is the tribulation? The tribulation is the wrath of the Lamb, his wrath being poured out upon this earth. Why would he beat up his bride? Okay, it doesn't make any sense. Jesus will come back and deliver believers from the wrath that is to come. So he's coming back to get us before the wrath comes. And then Jesus told his disciples in the Olivet Discourse to pray for deliverance from the tribulation. So the fact is that we don't have to worry about the tribulation because we're not going to be here. And again, God wrote these things in the Bible, and we should know them. That's why I'm teaching them, because we need to know these things. He didn't write to put them in there to scare us, but he put them in there to prepare us. All right. So let me, for about 5 minutes, let me get a little deep, right? So put on your Bible hats. I'm gonna get a little deep. So when we think about these 7 seals and 7 trumpets and 7 bowls that we're going to be studying here, how will they come? How will these things come? So I've put them, again, you should have this in your notes, that some people believe they will come in succession, right? You got the first seal. You see up there on the left side, I got that seal, right? The scroll that was sealed. You got the first, the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth seal, right? And they'll come in that order. And then the 7th seal is made up of 7 trumpets, right? So whereas the first 6 seals, the first seal was the rider on the white horse, the second seal, the rider on the black horse, the red horse, the third seal, the rider on the black horse, the 4th seal, the rider on the pale horse, the 5th seal, the 6th seal, that they all had things that came out of them. But now the 7th seal, out of the 7th seal comes 7 trumpets. And so a lot of people think that, well, that's the order that they're going to come in. And then when you get to the end of the 7 trumpets, you have the 7th trumpet, which is 7 bowl judgments. So this is what's called the succession theory, as far as these trumpets, these seals and trumpets and bowls are concerned. The next one that you see is a divine judgment theory. And this one basically says that they don't come in any order at all, that they all just represent God's judgment, right? So there's no order. There's not 7 seals and then 7 trumpets and then 7 bowls. They don't come in any kind of order, but they all represent God's judgment. So at any point, he can be unleashing a seal, he can be unleashing a trumpet, he can be unleashing a bowl. That, it all works together, and it all is a part of God's divine judgment. All right, so that would be another viewpoint as to these seals and these trumpets and these bowls. Then there is the peace theory. You remember last week we talked about the Antichrist is the first seal, and that when he comes, what's he going to do? He's going to bring peace, right? So for the first 3.5 years, according to this theory, there's going to be peace on the earth. The Antichrist, if you remember, he comes riding on a white horse, which symbolizes conquering. He has a bow, but no arrow. That means he's going to conquer without warfare. And so he will conquer peacefully the first 3.5 years. And then in the middle of the 3.5 years, he's going to break the covenant with the Jewish people. And then after that, all hell is going to break loose on the earth. So the first 3.5 years of the tribulation will be peaceful. At the middle of the tribulation, then that's when all the wrath of God is going to be poured out. The second 3.5 years. This is what they say Jesus talked about, the great tribulation. People will be martyred, war, famine, pestilence, martyrdom, all these things, the judgments, drying up of the sea, the moon turning to blood. All this stuff is going to happen during the second half of the tribulation. So this one, again, it says that the first 3.5 years will be a time of peace. And then the second 3.5 will be the time of great tribulation. And then there's a third theory, which basically says, again, the first 3.5 years, we see the 4 seals being opened. the first seal, the Antichrist, the second seal, third, fourth riders on the horses. And then the second 3.5 years will be that time of great tribulation. All right, it'll be a time of great tribulation. So this one, how this differs from the one before it, this one is not necessarily saying that the first 3.5 years are going to be all peaceful. It's saying that, the Antichrist will come, but, there will also be famine and pestilence and war and death, happening during that first 3.5 years. But then it's going to pick up the second 3.5 years where we see the great tribulation. Okay, I know we got a little deep there, but I think it's important. We see, because we're going to be going through these seals and these trumpets and these bowls, and we want to have some kind of reference point as to when these things take place and when they happen. So, again, I know I keep saying this, but you have the notes. I put this in the notes, so if you want to read through it and you have questions, feel free in the upcoming lessons to ask any questions that you might have from reading the notes. All right, let me stop there and see if we have any feedback.
Okay. Questions?